Alright, so today we're gonna talk about your instrument rating. This video is for those of you who have already finished your private pilot training and are looking to take the next step towards becoming a professional pilot. So, let's begin. Hi friends, my name is Jorge Muñoz. I'm a senior instructor pilot working in El Salvador. This is the second video of this series where I try to break down what you will be studying and practicing during your pilot training, so you can get a better idea of what you're getting yourself into. On the first video we talked about your private pilot license. I will leave the link of that video in the description down below in case you are interested in that topic. But for this video, we're gonna be breaking down the instrument rating. How does it work and what you will have to do? What you will experience during this quote-unquote harder part of your general aviation career. As always, this video is going to be divided in different sections, so here on the screen you will see the timestamps for each specific section, and also you will find the timestamps linked in the video description down below and also in a pinned comment down below. So if you're in a hurry or you just want to know about one specific section, please feel free to jump to the timestamp that you're interested in and go use your time in something more productive. But if you want to see the whole video, I appreciate it quite a lot. I always try to explain what I talk about in such a simple way that everyone can comprehend it, even if you are not inside the aviation world at all. So if you just started your private pilot training or you are just interested in this topic, I still highly recommend you watch this video. Who knows, maybe you'll get something out of it. So with all that out of the way, now let's begin. First, I have to say that if you just completed your private pilot license, you can indeed begin right away with your commercial pilot license. But most people decide to do their instrument rating before their private pilot license, because a commercial pilot without an instrument rating is practically useless when compared to a commercial pilot that has his instrument rating. Because if you are a commercial pilot without an instrument rating, you have certain limitations, like you cannot fly with passengers at night, or not being able to travel further than 50 nautical miles from the airport where you took off. Because after 50 nautical miles, the weather can be very different from where you took off. You can possibly find bad weather and you are not certified to fly within bad weather. Therefore, trying to work as a commercial pilot without an instrument rating can be very difficult, or even impossible to do if what you're trying to do is becoming an airline pilot. By the way, you must be at least a private pilot to start your instrument rating. You can't start your aviation studies with this rating, because you need a solid basis of aviation knowledge. The reason why I consider the instrument rating to be more difficult than your private pilot license is because theoretically it is way more demanding of your time. It has way more knowledge, concepts, minimums, rules, regulations, limitations, communications, chart symbols, and overall theory that you will have to learn. And also a lot of the times you will have to memorize. You know that during your private pilot license you could learn something and then explain it with your own words. That means you comprehend what you are talking about. But here in your instrument rating, you will also have to memorize. You will have to memorize symbols, numbers, concepts, acronyms, and much more. You will have to memorize a lot. As a general idea of what you will learn during your IFR training, you will learn how to fly the airplane from takeoff to landing without practically ever looking outside your cockpit. You will practically fly while being blind, just being guided by the instruments in front of you. It doesn't matter if outside of your plane there is a storm, clouds, fog, or the darkness of the night. As I said in the previous video, again link in the video description, all licenses and ratings can be divided into ground school and flight hours. If you have already done your private pilot license, You know that ground school is very similar in a way to the university. You are sitting in a desk taking notes while the teacher, or in this case the instructor, is in the front of the room explaining the lesson. For this rating, inside your classroom, you will first have a quick refresh of the most important knowledge you have acquired during your private license. That knowledge that is relevant for the lessons to come. And after that, you will learn a lot more in depth about human factors. Because now, those possible risks that you and the flight crew might be running into will be exponentially more dangerous. Because many times you will be limited by the information from your instruments. Remember, sometimes you won't be able to look outside the window to know what is happening outside the airplane because of the weather. During ground school, you will learn as well about your new flight instruments. Of course, you will have a refresh of all the instruments that you have been using up to this point. You know, your basic instruments. But now you will also be learning about instrument navigation, two of the most common instrument navigation of nowadays. You will learn how to rely just by your instruments. You will learn how to rely on your attitude indicator. And you will learn how to properly put the right amount of attention to each specific instrument. Because some of them need more of your attention than others. Here you will learn about radials, how to intercept them and how to follow them. So yeah, a big part of this training is to teach you how to use all the instruments that you have been using up to this point even better than before. And how to start using your navigation instruments that you probably haven't been using. So you will learn some new instrument parts and some new instrument principles as well. And you will even be learning about how to use your PFD, your primary flight display, and also your multifunction display. As I have already said in this video, you will see a lot of theory during this rating, and the instruments are no exception. You will learn how to have interpretations of the different instruments, because the information they give you may sometimes collide with each other. But we can keep talking about the topics that you're going to be studying within the instrument principles all day. That's not the idea of this video. So let's just say that you will see a lot of new theory about the instruments of the airplane. You think you knew everything? Well, think again. And I took a bath. But you won't only learn how to use every single instrument on the airplane. You will also learn how they work, what makes them function in the way they do. You will practice different techniques to effectively cross-check the instruments while flying without a visual reference outside the airplane, and during heavy workload periods. Of course, you will also learn new stuff about airports and airspace. Probably you will learn about new airport signs and runway markings, along with a completely new airspace where you haven't flown before. And that one is Class Alpha airspace. An airspace that only knows IFR flights. That means that no visual pilot is allowed inside. Along those lines, you will also need to learn a whole new way to communicate through the radio, because IFR comms are very different from what you are used to during your VFR flights. It's practically a whole new phraseology that you will have to learn. But all in all, you'll only have to do what you did to learn how to communicate during your first flight hours of your private license. Practice, practice, and practice. Don't be afraid to make a couple of errors in the radio. Don't sweat it, man, we all have done it. Of course, you will also learn about instrument charts, departure charts, vectors, airport charts, approach charts, and route charts, arrival charts, charts, and more charts with a good amount of procedures. From my money, I would have to say that the instrument charts are the very heart and soul of the instrument rating, and will be your day-to-day during your airline career in the future. Don't worry that much either, they are not that hard to read. But they do usually have a lot of little symbols that you will have to learn the meaning of. And to end this whole instrument charts deal, you will have to study about ILS approaches. BOR approaches, and RNAV approaches. They are all different instrument procedures for you to safely land the airplane during an instrument flight. These are the three most common instrument approaches of nowadays. This means that you don't land the airplane by looking outside the cockpit. You land it by reading and following the path that the charts are telling you to follow. Unless there is something like a hurricane or a super severe thunderstorm on your way, if you perform in the right way all of these charts that I have mentioned, regardless of the weather, you will not run into any risk of crashing your airplane with another airplane, or against the terrain for that matter. You will be taking your airplane from one airport to the other in no time. Ending up this segment of what you will see during your ground school, you will see a lot more in depth about meteorology in general, way more than what you saw during your private license. This one might not be the most exciting topic to talk about, or to learn about for that matter. At least it isn't for me. But it is extremely important for your own in-flight safety. This means perfecting your reading of the weather reports like METAR and TAF, revisiting weather factors that might be present during your day-to-day flights, and of course weather hazards. And finally, you will have to learn what to do during emergencies that can happen to you while being on an IFR flight environment. What should you do with your airplane on an emergency where you can't see anything outside the cockpit because of the bad weather that it is present? Sounds pretty scary to be flying blind during an emergency, right? Oh, I almost forgot. You will also learn how to make IFR flight plans. Because yes, they are different from a BFR flight plan. But once again, you will learn how to do it with practice in no time. So, don't sweat it, man. That's it for the ground school portion of your instrument rating. I want to say that these topics that I have mentioned up to this point are not in any particular order, because the order in which they are taught can be changed from one flight school to the other. As you can see, the theory that you will be studying during this rating is fairly big, bigger than the private pilot license theory. We have spent all this time just scratching the surface of the topics that you are going to see, basically just naming them. We are not talking about any one of them in particular. But hey, we wanted to be pilots, right? Now that we are finally done talking about the ground school, we can talk about the flight hours. Remember when I said that the instrument rating was harder than the private pilot training, right? Well, that's very true for the ground school. But I'm willing to say that the instrument rating become a little bit easier when it comes down to the flight hours. That is, only if you have very clear in your head this whole idea of instrument flying. I mean, you don't need to learn again how to properly take off or land the airplane. You have already practiced all of that hundreds of times during your flight hours of your private pilot license. Neither you have to learn how to maintain straight-in level flight, perform complicated maneuvers with the airplane, nor practice the emergencies of the engine. Your instructor will not be focused on that for the most part of your flight hours this time, because of the understanding that you should already know that, just by having your private pilot license with you. Of course, you can dedicate a couple of hours during your training to refresh that, but that's just not the main point for you right now. I said that the flight hours are easier because when it comes down to practice, when we talk about dexterity, all you have to do during this rating is just flight the airplane. You take the airplane up in the air, then back to the ground, and you make some turns here and there. But there is a catch. While you're doing this, your brain is worrying and thinking about 1,000 different things at the same time. Like, for example, correctly reading the instrument charts and listening to the radio for the ATC instructions that can sometimes become a little bit complicated, while cross-checking all your instruments over and over again. But man, what am I exactly going to do during my instrument hours? Well, you will start by going into the flight simulator. I talked a lot about the flight simulator during my first video, so once more I will leave the link of that video in the description down below. But basically over there on your flight simulator, you will learn how to intercept, track and follow radials. Those are basically invisible highways up in the air that take care of taking your airplane from one airport to the other. In the flight sim, you will learn how to read all the charts that I have mentioned before, how to fly into bad weather, how to perform the ILS procedure and all the others approach procedures, but at a slower pace than on the real airplane. And that's extremely useful over here on the instrument rating, because when you get confused in the flight simulator, you and your instructor will only pause the sim and you both will sort out the confusion without the rush of the real flight and the complicated communications with the ATC, something that you cannot do during the real flight. So basically, first you will fly into the flight simulator and then you will transfer all that knowledge and practice to the real airplane. But either on the flight simulator or in the airplane, your training will probably go something like this. First, you will learn how to track and follow radials. You will have to understand this radials concept very clear from your ground school. Once you are comfortable with following radials, you will learn about holding patterns and procedure turns. For these two, you will have to do exactly the same, track and follow radials, but in a very specific way. You will notice that almost everything inside the instrument flight hours is based around radials. Even the departure charts and route charts and arrival charts that I've mentioned before, everything is about radials. And now that you are getting good following these radials, you will get to fly the real instrument charts. You will discover that your airport has a whole set of instrument charts, just like the ones that you are seeing on your screen right now. You will learn to read them, to understand them, to comprehend them, and you will learn all the secrets inside those instrument charts. As I said before, when it comes down to the actual flying, you will discover that the instrument rating is pretty easy. Because what you have to do in order to nail a flight is to study and understand the theory. There is not much I can say about the flight hours itself. You will just keep on practicing what I have already said. You will be practicing the instrument charts of the airport of your flight school and possibly also the instrument charts of the airports nearby over and over again. So for example, here you have a very easy instrument chart. This is a standard instrument departure chart. You can see the name SID over there. That's what it stands for, Standard Instrument Departure. The name of the chart is Yankee Sierra Victor 1 Bravo Departure. That's the name of the chart, like your own name. Charts happen to also have a name. And this is for the airport Mike Sierra Sierra Sierra. And basically what you have to understand of this chart is this. You see that little line over there? Well, that's the runway. So in this airport we have two runways, runway 33 and runway 15. For this specific chart we are taking off the airplane from the runway 33. So we will be taking off with a heading of 334. We have to climb with our airplane at or above 3,500 feet over the sea level, and we cannot exceed the 5 nautical miles from the airport. So here you can see that we have to turn to the right to the heading 172. As you can see right now, we are heading back to the airport, but you see that 5,000 over there? Well, that means that by the time that we come back to the airport, we must be at 5,000 feet. And you can see that 352 with the letter R to the left side. Well, that's the radial that we will be following in this case. So by now we will be flying the heading 172 and the radial 352 inbound. That means that with this radial we are getting closer to the airport. And you see those little arrows over there? Well, that's the holding pattern that I was talking about before. So when you are vertically over the airport at 5,000 feet, you must perform that holding pattern. As you can see over there, the holding pattern is telling us that we have to fly in the heading 352 and 172 for 1 minute each. How do we know that it is 1 minute? A standard holding pattern will always be 4 minutes long. That means that we will be spending 1 minute flying heading 352, 1 minute turning to the right, 1 minute flying heading 172, and 1 minute more turning to the right, going back to the heading 352. So in a nutshell, this is what an instrument chart looks like, and this is what you will be doing during your whole instrument training, your flight hours of the instrument training. So wrapping up all this, when it comes down to the dexterity and the practice that you have with your airplane, this should be the easiest part of your career. But when we talk about the mental workload that you will be submitting yourself into, instrument training can be and will be brutal. This rating is a lot more theory-based, memorization and knowledge-heavy than the private license. But that's the fun about aviation, right? You will have to overcome a lot of different challenges. Like in this case, learning how to fly blind because of the bad weather that you are flying into. And don't forget, the instrument rating expands your possibilities to a whole new world. It truly is the basis for those of you pilots who want to pursue an airline career. So that's the end for today's video. If you want to become an outstanding private pilot, or you are curious and you want to prepare yourself in the best possible ways for all the tests to come, I highly recommend you should check out my book Essential Knowledge for Private Pilot. You will find the description of the book in the link of the description down below. It is an Amazon Kindle exclusive. This book uses the two most effective study techniques in the whole world, active recall and spaced repetition, and applies them into aviation. If that sounds good to you, please check out the book down below. It is available in English and in Spanish as well. Remember, you shouldn't be studying hard, you should be studying effectively. And with this book you can do just that. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it or at least found it somewhat entertaining, please give it a like. If you learned something new, I'll appreciate quite a lot if you subscribe to the channel. And if you just feel like it, you can follow me on Instagram. The link is also in the description. I upload very cool photos over there, or at least they seem cool in my head. I try to upload videos every week, mainly explaining different topics that has to do in a way or another about the IFR world, but in a logical order. Also, I will probably be talking about aviation and education in general, but always trying to contribute something new to you. If you have a question or an opinion about something that I have said in the video, or you want to talk to me about something, please feel free to comment down below, or you can get in touch with me in Instagram. I will love to hear what you have to say. If you found this video interesting, you should check out what you should expect from your private pilot training. I will leave here somewhere in the screen the link for that video. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye!